Namaskar, good evening. You're watching the Tianjin edition of Breaking Ground and I am Swati Joshi. Well, behind me is the Tianjin Eye that has witnessed three key developments today in the SCO Summit. Let me break that down for you. First, development number one that everybody is talking about is how Pakistan was shamed and embarrassed. Yes, absolutely right. If the royal snub by the Chinese President Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, the President of Russia, was not enough, well, terrorism was called out from the SCO platform. Will Pakistan and its backers get the message? Experts will join us on the broadcast with their views on this. We'll also focus on the power of the Troika, the coming together of Vladimir Putin, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping. What does that mean for the global world order? Is Trump watching this closely? Will Trump be worried? We'll talk about that as well. And later in the broadcast, I'll tell you what we witnessed in the sidelines of the SCO Summit. The power and the future of technology and AI. We'll get you some exclusive sneak peek on how the future of AI looks like. But let's first get you all these angles in detail. Let's first talk about the royal snub to Pakistan. Well, that moment was caught on camera when Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin were having an intimate chat. They were so into the conversation that they were having that they completely ignored the presence of Shehbaz Sharif, who was standing in the background. Prime Minister Narendra Modi pulled Vladimir Putin, the President of Russia, towards the Chinese President Xi Jinping. They had a moment there, warmth and smiles on their faces, and behind them was Shehbaz Sharif, the Pakistani Prime Minister. And that was not enough. That snub is not the talking point. That's not the story. The real story is how India has called out terrorism from the SCO platform. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his opening address of the plenary session, spoke about the Pahalgam terror attack. The Prime Minister asked a very important question to the member nations of the SCO. The Prime Minister asked, is it acceptable that a country supports terrorism? Is that acceptable to the member nations of SCO? Let's listen in to what the Prime Minister said while calling out the double standards and the hypocrisy that is practiced on the issue of terrorism.
आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें एससीओ रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। टेरर फाइनेंसिंग के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई। इसमें मेरे समर्थन के लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। यह हमला केवल भारत की अंतरात्मा पर ही आघात नहीं था। यह मानवता में विश्वास रखने वाले हर देश, हर व्यक्ति को खुली चुनौती थी। ऐसे में प्रश्न उठना स्वाभाविक है, क्या कुछ देशों द्वारा आतंकवाद का खुलेआम समर्थन हमें स्वीकार्य हो सकता है? इसी सोच के साथ हम चाबहार कोर और इंटरनेशनल नॉर्थ साउथ ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉरिडोर जैसे इनिशिएटिव पर काम कर रहे हैं। इनसे हम अफगानिस्तान और मध्य एशिया के साथ संपर्क बढ़ा सकते हैं। हमारा मानना है कि कनेक्टिविटी के हर प्रयास में संप्रभुता और क्षेत्रीय अखंडता का सम्मान होना चाहिए। कनेक्टिविटी that bypasses sovereignty, losing trust and unity.
Well, what the Prime Minister said resonated loud and clear. It was not just limited to the Prime Minister calling out terrorism and the hypocrisy of those who support and back terror nations, but the fact that it reflected in the joint draft statement, that became a big talking point. The joint declaration of the SCO members condemned terrorism in all its forms. They condemned the Pahalgam terror attack and also demanded that the perpetrators, organizers and the sponsors should be brought to justice. Let me in fact introduce the experts who are joining us on the broadcast to talk about the significance of this moment. We have former diplomat Veena Sikri, and we are also joined by Professor Brahma Chellaney, strategic affairs expert. Let me first come to you, Professor Chellaney. How do you view this moment? Is this just another instance of India talking about terrorism, or does this mean a lot more than that? The fact that the Prime Minister spoke about Pahalgam and you saw that reflecting in the joint declaration, India's concerns on terrorism from the SCO platform.
Two things stand out. First, that Prime Minister Modi spoke about cross-border terrorism faced by India from Chinese soil. China, after all, has aided and abetted Pakistan's cross-border terrorism against India. Second, in contrast to what happened when Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was in Qingdao, China, in June, and he blocked the adoption of a statement at the Defense Minister's SCO meet because that statement omitted any reference to Pahalgam, but brought in Balochistan at the instance of Pakistan backed by China. Today, we have a statement that clearly condemns the Pahalgam massacre. So this represents a climb down by China. As you know, the SCO works on the basis of consensus. So, ironically, even Pakistan agreed to the text of the joint declaration in respect to terrorism. Having said that, even though this is an important progress compared to what happened in June, when they wouldn't even condemn Pahalgam massacre, the wording of this joint declaration in relation to terrorism uses phraseology that echo the international consensus. In fact, they echo the United Nations Security Council statement after Pahalgam. That statement came right after Pahalgam massacre on 25th April this year,
Yes.
where the Security Council held, they said that perpetrators, organizers, financiers and sponsors of this reprehensible act in Pahalgam, this act of terrorism, they said, they should be held accountable and brought to justice. And they also stressed, the Security Council stressed, that those responsible for these killings should be held accountable and urge all states to cooperate actively with all relevant authorities in this regard. So what has emerged from the SCO largely echoes the international consensus that what happened in Pahalgam was beyond the pale. This was a reprehensible act of terrorism, and I think it's significant that given the fact that Xi Jinping is seeking to improve relations with India, that there has been a significant climb down by China.
That's such a great value addition. You've brought out such an excellent point. I want to go across to Veena Sikri on that very point. Imagine a country that was behind the Pahalgam attack that took place on India, today as part of the SCO has to sign the joint declaration condemning that very act, condemning the act for which the member nations are demanding that the perpetrators, organizers and the sponsors should be brought to justice. Imagine the kind of embarrassment that it had to face.
Yes, certainly for Pakistan it is definitely a great embarrassment, and I think for China too, for our Prime Minister very significantly also mentioned about projects and programs not affecting the sovereignty of other countries. This is a direct reference to the CPEC between Pakistan and China, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which goes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So I think our Prime Minister has been very forthright. He's been very absolutely put all the points that concern India that we have spoken about in many different forums. We put them all together in a very good balanced statement, and all his concerns are reflected in the joint declaration. So this is absolutely a great movement forward, and it's a great success for India, because there have been times in the past when in these kind of meetings, when Defence Minister Rajnath Singh could not accept the communique because our point of view is not reflected. There have been times in other SCOs meetings where Pakistan has tried to display the wrong map of Pakistan showing huge chunks of India in their territory, and there was one occasion even when NSA Mr. Doval walked out of the meeting because they refused to take down that map or to and they insisted on displaying it continuously. So I think in these points of view, this is absolutely an important progress, and the need of the moment now is to build on this progress. And I think we have the support of a very strong structure that SCO has, the RATS, the Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure, which is based in Tashkent in Uzbekistan, and we should follow up on this by pinpointing, because the RAT structure, the SCO RAT structure has laid down many aspects and issues, the way in which the anti-terrorism work of the SCO can progress. Governments are required to give information and so on. So all the points, where Pakistan, all the named terrorist groups, named even by the UN, which are known to be based in Pakistan, getting information on them, saying what they are doing, then the financing of these terrorist groups, and how they're getting the money, where they're getting the money from. India is keen now that maybe Pakistan should once again be put on the grey list of the FATF, because they are continuing to support these groups. And we do know that even after our work in destroying the infrastructure of terrorism in Pakistan, and including the headquarters of all these groups, whether in Muridkia or Bawalpur or other places, senior Pakistan military officers attended the funerals of those terrorists, known and recognized terrorists, senior terrorists who had died in the attack by India on the infrastructure of these terrorist groups.
Right.
So there is a very important recognition by the SCO, and if we can build upon this, I think we already have a basis to even go to the UN, because we want to have a convention against global convention against terrorism, and there's discussions even on what terrorism, what is the definition. So I think all the decision in the reflected in the Tianjin Declaration of the SCO provides us a very strong basis to move forward.
So you're saying what has happened is great, it's significant, it's a defining moment, but you have to build up on that. You have to ensure that steps are taken now and that it is implemented. I just have about 2.5 minutes left into the discussion, I am being told. I quickly want to go across to Professor Chellaney. Professor Chellaney, what do you expect will happen next? Of course, we won't see sudden changes, we won't see decisions being taken just because the joint declaration has been signed and member nations have given their commitment, but at least you would be able to hold them to the commitment that they have made.
Let's be realistic. There are declarations and declarations. There's a Supreme Court, a Security Council statement, as I mentioned in April. There are so many, in fact, international law prohibits states from sponsoring acts of terrorism against other states. The question is, after this declaration, will there be a change in the attitudes of China and Pakistan? Will China stop aiding and abetting Pakistan's cross-border terrorism against India? Will it stop blocking the designation of Pakistan-based groups and individuals as international terrorists at the UN? And will Pakistan's behavior change in any manner? So I think it's important to recognize at the end of the day that the fight against cross-border terrorism is India's own fight, and this is a lonely fight that India has to wage, because declarations will not aid this fight. India has to use its own strength and resolve to deal with the challenge of cross-border cross-border terrorism. Declarations are important diplomatically to build pressure, but beyond that, it's your own resolve and your own capability that will determine whether you are able to contain the scourge of cross-border terrorism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. India will have to fight its own battles. Thank you very much, Professor Chellaney and Veena Sikri, for joining us on the broadcast with your perspective. Well, let's now shift our focus to the moment that has become the biggest talking point of the SCO Summit. The power of the Troika, the coming together of Vladimir Putin, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. That warmth, the laughter, the handshakes, the coming together of the leaders, that informal chat that took place has become the biggest talking point. Let's also talk about the bilaterals that happened. Let's begin with the second bilateral, the one between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin, in which the Prime Minister on priority brought up the issue of Ukraine. The Prime Minister said that Russia and India have constantly been in touch and have been discussing Ukraine. The Prime Minister said that peace is the only way forward. He urged the President of Russia that we need to now find a way to ensure that there is lasting peace.
मैं हमेशा अनुभव करता हूं कि आपको मिलना मतलब एक यादगार मीटिंग भी होती है, बहुत सी चीजों की जानकारियों का आदान प्रदान करने का अवसर मिलता है। हम लगातार संपर्क में रहे हैं। दोनों पक्षों के बीच नियमित रूप से कई उच्च स्तरीय बैठकें भी हुई है। इस वर्ष दिसंबर में हमारी 23वीं समिट के लिए 140 करोड़ भारतीय उत्सुकतापूर्वक आपका इंतजार कर रहे हैं। एक्सेलेंसी हमारी स्पेशल एंड प्रिविलेज स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप की गहराई और व्यापकता का परिचायक है। कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों में भी भारत और रूस हमेशा कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चले हैं। हमारा करीबी सहयोग न केवल दोनों देशों के लोगों के लिए बल्कि वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। एक्सेलेंसी, यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं। हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे। संघर्ष को जल्द से जल्द खत्म करने और स्थायी शांति स्थापित करने का रास्ता खोजना होगा। ये पूरी मानवता की पुकार है। एक्सेलेंसी, एक बार फिर आपका मैं हृदय से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं।
Well, this was followed by Vladimir Putin's statement in which he blamed the Western influence. He said that the attempts being made by the Western powers to pull or draw Ukraine into NATO is something that Russia sees as a direct threat to its security.
Вторая причина кризиса заключается в постоянных попытках Запада втянуть Украину в НАТО, что, как мы многократно подчеркивали и говорили, причем на протяжении многих лет, представляет прямую угрозу безопасности России. Кстати, в результате государственного переворота на Украине в 2014 году было устранено то политическое руководство страны, которое не поддерживало вступление Украины в Североатлантический блок, в НАТО.
Well, these remarks of Vladimir Putin are also seen as a counter to what Donald Trump has been saying, to what Mr. Navarro has said, calling the war Modi's war. And far away from all of this, keeping all of this behind, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin shared a almost 30-minute car ride. Both the leaders reached the venue in the same car. We don't know what they spoke about, but there's a lot of interest around what did the two talk about in that car ride. And apart from that, there was a 50-minute bilateral that took place. What is unfortunate is the kind of politics that is happening back home on that meeting, the bilateral between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping. Let's listen into some political reactions.
No Prime Minister would resort to this shamelessness. Until few weeks ago, months ago, China and Pakistan were fighting us together in Operation Sindoor. And now China has become a victim of terror for this Prime Minister.
जब बात अमेरिका की और चाइना की हो रही हो तो हम फिर थोड़ा पीछे जाते हैं तो हम देखते हैं कि जब ऑपरेशन सिंदूर चल रहा था तो कहीं न कहीं चाइना पाकिस्तान के साथ खड़ा नजर आया। अमेरिका जिस तरह से आर्थिक मदद दी गई और जहां तक बात अमेरिका और चाइना की है तो देश की सरकार को कूटनीतिक तरह से देश हित में फैसले लेने चाहिए।
करूंगी। Well, you saw what the leaders talked about, the politics that was discussed, trade, and the issue of Russia-Ukraine war as well. But you know, apart from all of this, on the sidelines of the SCO summit, on display was the